Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, serial tech entrepreneur. I have 30 companies under my belt. 20 of those failed, but 10 of those succeeded. And that roller coaster of a ride is part of my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. The premise is around how I've always built custom software around my companies to operationalize systems, create unique client experiences, and raise enterprise value. And I've learned the failures you have, whether it's a whole business or a project, you're allowed to be upset, but get over it. Use it as fuel, study it, and make sure you don't repeat those again. Now I'm the CEO of Sonatify Technology. We are a nearshore software development company helping scale existing engineering teams. And we have a fun guest today, Charles Yeomans out of San Francisco, California. Charles has been the CEO, founder, tech leader. He's worked across many industries with PE-backed companies. Charles, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the invite.
You bet. Charles, if you would, give our listeners a couple-minute overview of the journey of your career.
Sure. Yeah. So started out as a Navy intelligence officer. From there,
thank you for your service.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure, though. I liked it. It was a lot of fun. But then got an MBA from Stanford. Then started on Wall Street, worked there for a number of years, but started to get a hankering to be, instead of the guy organizing the weddings, to the guy who wants to be in one, sort of. And so, anyway, so then I took a job as COO of an insurance operation in New York, and ran a big chunk of that. Then had an offer from a PE fund to go out and run a company in California. So that's when I moved back here. And so we ran that and sold it, built it up some, made some acquisitions and flipped it. Sort of like my big thing is raising money and doing deals and stuff like that. Big banker background, right? And so
that background definitely helps when you're building companies, raising money, going out there.
Raising money is pretty important. So anyway, so then I took kind of a left turn. So my brother's the head of pain research at Stanford, and he talked me into running a biotech, which was a lot harder than you'd think. It is really hard. I don't know. Most people would be better at thinking about that instead.
You know what? I have some buddies that are in that space, and it's complex.
To say the least. Great to work with. Really nice folks, really smart. Really a great environment. So, and it went okay. It could have gone better, but at least we sold that. And then I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was considering a buyout. But this guy in my town, I lived in East Bay, east of San Francisco, pitched me on this idea. And I said, this can't be, there has to be other people there. But I checked it out. I talked to some profs. I talked to some patent lawyers, and they said, nope. This is a new thing, and it's really cool, by the way. And so we started the company in which I'm now a part of, which is called Atombeam.
And so tell us about Atombeam. I know you guys are tackling the world of complex data, how to move it quicker.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. So we have a couple of products, but the first one, the one that we started with and still is the most mature, has commercial, has customers and all that, is called NERPAC. And NERPAC is about squeezing down the size of data, but it's not a compression. And what it does instead is it swaps out the contents of a file for code words that it gets out of a code book. And the code book consists of a bunch of patterns matched to code words. And they use machine learning to look at a whole pile of sample data from a particular source or something. So it builds this code book. And now if you have a code book and a source and a destination, you completely change the contents of a message, a file, for code words, which has the effect of reducing the size on average about 75%. But because it's only a swap, it'll do it in a couple of microseconds. And that means, because 75% and a few microseconds means that you're going to get about 4 times more data through a given connection, including IoT type data, because it doesn't matter how big the file is. It can be as little as you like, because it's not like compression. Compression looks in each file for repetitions of pattern. And you don't find very many repetitions of these little files that are made by IoT. So this is it's kind of a big deal. And it also deeply obfuscates it. So it's adding a kind of security. And it also makes it so that you have a data lake full of this data. It was encoded with a code book. And if you have the code book that was used to encode it, all of it is searchable and randomly accessible. So in a reduced form, and we can also, by the way, encrypt it. So at the same time, so it can be small, encrypted, and also searchable and randomly accessible. So when you think about it, and we could do this on a little tiny, cheap 10-cent chip. So you could put this into a sensor or whatever, reduce the size of it, super light, super fast, and also encrypt it, send it all the way to the data center and just store it. You don't compress it. And now it's all just as usable as if it were full size. It's a new structure for data itself.
How did you think of this, Charles? Where did this come from?
So originally, this other guy in my town, his name is Ashgar. He and his family's idea, and so they didn't know what to do. They had they're software guys, people, and so they talked to me, and we started this company. So that it wasn't my idea, just to be clear. However, a tremendous amount of development has happened since that time, including by a professor at the University of South Carolina, who's a mathematician, a brilliant guy, who took a baseline idea and turned it into a real thing. But now we have 30 engineers, and there's a SaaS version, and there's version that goes point to point. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this thing. And like Ericsson is putting it into their gateways, for example. Viasat uses it to send data over satellites. Well, guess what? Where do you need a lot more bandwidth? Well, satellites is a good place to start.
Interesting. You being a CEO, an entrepreneur, it's not always about being the person who thinks of the idea. It's the person who's able to execute on it.
Yep.
And that's a big thing. And so let me ask a question. So when you're converting the data back to its full form,
Yep.
do you lose anything from the code book, from the way that it's law? And
So what's going on is like, right, that you to be not to go into too much detail, but you create the code book, and it might be, and it's created out of different, depends on the pattern length, depends on the particular data set. So this particular data might be 128-bit pattern lengths. This other one's 64. This other one's 200. But inevitably, you will have mismatches because you can't have every possible combination. It would be more than there are particles in the universe, right?
yeah,
So you say, okay, so what do you do? So you have a second code book, what we call a secondary code book, that's 8 bits. That, okay, mismatch, hand it over the 8-bit, whack it up into whatever, as much as it needs to be in byte lengths. And so that encodes it can't be encoded by the primary. You get about 90% with the primary, and about 10% goes to the 8-bit. So no, we don't lose anything. Every single bit gets encoded. And it's just a question of, if you want to hit the big code book first.
So does it support all types of data, whether they're video, photo, charts, complex formulas?
It comes down to this. So we have another product we call NERCom that is focused more on images, but NERPAC itself is about low entropy data. It's about telemetry, tracking data, time series, SCADA, that sort of thing. So and the reason it's not good for something like video is because what it does is needs patterns, right? And so when you talk about encrypted data, once it's encrypted, if you're talking about video, images, highly random and high entropy, and therefore not a good candidate for us. A lot of times we'll get a few percent, but it's not something you'd use for it.
Amazing. So, wow, cutting edge stuff. What projects do you have coming down the pipeline? You mentioned the next product focused around images. Tell us more about fun stuff you're working on.
Yeah. So just to mention, so one of the key things about NERPAC is that it's like we've had 7 different contracts with DoD. We have 2 active right now. One of them, the Space Force, is about sending a lot of data, this tactical data, over this. It's over this. There's a data link that is ubiquitous in both the US and allies. It's called Link 16. Link 16 is used by planes, by ships, by guys in handhelds, tanks, you name it. It's how they communicate. But guess what? It was made 1980 something. And so the speed is kbps, and I emphasize the K.
And that's still being used?
Yes,
Wow.
ubiquitous. It is everywhere. And guess who would like to have a lot more bandwidth, right? I mean, so on that particular kind of data, we get 8.8 times more data, which, yeah, it's still not, you're not talking broadband, right? But you're talking about something that's substantively better. And so there's a lot. I mean, we're working right now with L3 Harris on this and talking to the Navy and talking to Air Force and Space Force, and Space Force is actually testing it and all that. That could be a big time game changer for a lot of military applications and naval applications.
Amazing. So tell us more about your engineering team that's pulling this off. The
Yeah, we got
cutting edge
guys
new technology.
run by a guy, right, named Jim Luciani. Jim is a PhD in CS from Carnegie Mellon. Used to be a VP at Ericsson and a VP at engineering at Akamai. And he's one of these guys. He's kind of one of these guys that is a Pied Piper. Where he goes, he's got his cadre, his posse that comes with him.
They follow them everywhere.
So we brought in a lot of those guys, a lot of Akamai guys and Ericsson guys. So very, very high end quality people who will not settle for, pretty good or even excellent. They got to have perfect. And so I wish you'd go a little quicker sometimes, but we do get things absolutely right.
And you guys are located in Silicon Valley, right?
Well, I'm here.
Silicon Valley area?
Yeah, San Francisco. But we have a ton of guys outside Boston,
Okay.
where a big chunk of the engineers are. And but we also, when we have our head of product, it used to be head of product for Inmarsat, and he's just outside London. So we have a fair bit of geographic diversity going on.
So are you guys a fully remote company?
I wouldn't say fully because there's such heavy concentration around Boston, and I'm here. The CFO here is here. The controllers here. So and some other sort of administrative kinds of types. But in terms of production engineering, now I should say we also have on the R&D side, a whole nother project, and that is being run by a guy who's based in New York, in upstate New York. So he's building an AI, generative AI that is going to, I got to tell you, I'm slow to say this, but I got to tell you, it could be a huge game changer in AI because it learns, it's much smaller and it'll keep like 10 years worth of a big company's data in 250 gigabytes. And people are going to think you're crazy when I say that, but
Yeah, no kidding.
when you're talking about a geometry that's thousands of dimensions and it's using this geometry for how it thinks. I can't go into because everybody's going to think, well, you're talking about geometric deep learning. No, I'm not. Just to be clear, it's a really different thing. But this thing you don't train it. It learns entirely through interactions and giving it access to information and all this. It's much more like a human, and it uses tremendously less power than an LLM. I mean, like,
Interesting. Now, when did you start this company, Atombeam Technologies?
2017,
Okay.
late 2017. And so go ahead.
I'm curious when this started and, especially with your background, the approach you took to get funding for it.
Yeah. So that is a good point. That is a very unusual story. So so we started it then, and the original guy who's bankrolled us is a guy who's backed me before. He owns a winery, and so he's not a tech guy, but he has a very sound understanding of business. And he was intrigued and did the first chunk and continued to support us for a while. But and then we focused a lot on sort of not only building the tech, but also creating a really robust patent portfolio. So we have now 125 issued patents and another 170 or so pending patents.
Well,
And so it- it's a big focus of ours. And part of the reason we are able to do this with the limited capital we've raised is that we have a patent guy who's not in a big law firm. I mean, I've used big law firms in my past. He's a lot less expensive and he's great. He was CTO of a Fortune 500. So he's not, like some guy who's basically a lawyer trying to figure out the technology side. He's a freaking technology guy who's understands very well the legal side of it.
that's a rare mix, and that's a good find.
Well, the greatest thing about it though is he invents a lot of the stuff, the patenting for our account. I mean, and I'm not kidding, a lot of stuff.
Interesting. Interesting.
He's a real fight. I got to tell you. I mean, we're lucky to have that guy.
So a business like this where you're doing cutting edge stuff, you're creating patents, sometimes that could be even harder to raise capital because often in that type of business, it could take more time to get to,
It's a
strong revenues and positive cash flow.
long time to get to market, too long, but it is what it is. You know how it is. It's things don't always go in a straight line in a startup. It's like they never go in a straight.
Yes, I have never seen it happen. That's why a business plan needs to be fluid because anything you write originally will always change. So, what are some of the biggest either business or technical outcomes you're focused on for the remainder of the year?
So the big things. So big big thing from a business perspective is two big things. One is with respect to NERPAC. We have a customer in Saudi Arabia who's a big fintech there, has half the banks. And so fintech is a big space for us, and we want to expand that big time this year and next year. We think that's a big opportunity for NERPAC because, like, part of it is you have banks that send tons, enormous amounts of data, and it's got to be right all the time. And like, sort of like, yeah, it's pretty close. It's like, no, that's how much it is. I mean, nobody's going to accept. Well, I was only off of, a few 100,000. I mean, he's like,
Yeah, not when it comes to money.
no. So, so we are trusted by banks, right? And so that's a big statement. And another big place that we want to get expanded is in oil and gas. So we're in dialogues now with some of the biggest oil service companies around, and there are big time opportunities for us in that space, both with our generative AI, which we call the persistent cognitive machine, the PCM, and with NERPAC. There's a tremendous amount of data that moves from over satellites a lot for oil and gas. That's a big focus. And then the third big focus, and it'll change, of course, but in a few months, right? I'll add something else or whatever. But the other big focus is in naval and military applications. One of the things that we're doing with PCM is we are working to create a very sophisticated demo of the command center of the future, which is a big Navy priority. It's a command and control AI for command centers like in a carrier or in a ship. And all these things can be federated together. Different instances of PCM can be federated together, throughout an entire operation. So on ships, on aircraft, on drones, all can have PCM instances. And federated together, they can inform each other, and they can grow their own sort of thought cache, their own understanding and memory of things. And
Certainly cutting edge stuff here.
it's pretty wild. But we're going to have it. It works right now, but this demo is going to be next month, and we intend to blow them away because they've been wanting this for years and years. They keep making videos about it, but nobody's been able to create anything like it. But next month, we're going to give them a solid demo that shows it works.
So you got some awesome, aggressive, mind-boggling growth plans here in areas you're getting in. What are some of the biggest challenges that you got to work through to get there?
Well, it's always money, right? I mean, that's one of the things. Actually, you asked that before. So we've raised 32 million in total, or closer to 33. But 28 of that comes from crowdfunding.
That's a lot of money through crowdfunding.
It's a lot more than typical. We've raised it all on Start Engine. of all the Start Engine companies that have raised on Start Engine, other than Start Engine itself, we've raised the most.
I've never heard of somebody raising that much through crowdfunding. That's amazing. So yeah, smaller investors through the platform putting anywhere from 100 to 1,000 to 100 plus thousand on their credit card investing.
What they do,
Amazing.
it's like it's those kinds of numbers. I think our average in the last one was like maybe 2,000, 2,500, something like that, is the average investment.
And did that have to be a Reg A?
No, last one was a Reg A plus. That's what they call it when you do a crowdfunding. But there's two kinds. There's Reg CF, and as a matter of fact, we're about to start a new Reg CF probably early next month. It's been sitting in what they call a test the waters campaign, and
Gotcha.
limited to 5 million with a Reg CF per 12-month period. That, but I think we have 4.8 something committed already of the five. So it's only indications of interest, so there's still room if somebody wants to jump in, but we'll probably close out that round when we start it, probably within a couple of weeks, just because people know who we are now. We have 30,000 followers on Start Engine. We have, 9,000 some investors. Yeah,
Now, has Start Engine been a good platform for that? Like, I'm trying to think of the handful: WeFunder, Start Engine, and this is equity crowdfunding.
correct. And the other participant is Republic.
Yes.
Those three platforms. Two biggies are Start Engine and WeFunder, but we get a lot of strokes from Start Engine because we're their biggest funder, right? Their biggest raiser. So yeah, we get the chief marketing officer, who's ready to jump in and help us when we need it.
Well, you're their poster child if you've been able to pull that off for it.
I get lots of calls from guys want to know, like, how did you do this, and stuff, right? So I get a lot of those calls, right? Naturally, because, people see it as a really cool thing. And here's the thing, my capital structure consists of common stock, beginning and end. And that's all I have. I have no preferred. And so there's no VC, preferences. There's no, nobody sits on my board. No, I mean, I have experts sitting on my board. I have a 2-star retired admiral who used to run the Naval Information Warfare System Command. I've got, a guy who's a classmate of mine from business school who's, partner with a big fund and all this stuff. I mean, I have highly competent people on the board, but, a former assistant secretary of defense who's now just a big time, super connected guy.
So at what point do you, with your investment banking background, at what point does it make sense to get private equity or venture capital
Right.
involved versus the crowdfunding?
Yeah. Very, very
What's the thought
germane
there?
question. Very germane question. But you got to remember, last time we raised $20 million in our last round in 6 months. It took 6 months to do that. So how long does a VC how long would it take to do a VC round? And what would the expected outcome? I mean,
Right.
honestly,
I mean, longer.
probably lower and probably at a lower valuation and probably not probably guaranteed to be a preferred round, right? And so you look at all that stuff and you say, okay, all right, yeah, I get that question a lot, but then it's like, all right, why do you want me to do this? I'm not saying I won't, but I have to have a compelling reason. If I have access to capital through crowdfunding, I have to have a compelling reason that says, no, this is better to take money from whatever, from Sequoia or A16Z or whatever. Why would I do it? And there's arguments that says
Uh,
you're going to get a valuation premium. It's like when you exit. Okay, fair enough. But there's a cost to that.
I think we could do a whole week's worth of podcasts of you just talking about strategy on equity crowdfunding and how you've had success.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, it is really cool. And I do feel strongly that it's a really good thing. And it's not just a good thing for the companies, it's a really good thing for the investors too. Like what is the percentage of companies that have gone out of business? It's not a lot. I mean, because a lot of these companies that raise equity crowdfunding are just going to be like, a brewery that wants to open another brew pub or something. And a lot of it's that kind of stuff. And some of it is like high flyers like us, but the percentage is it's by the platform, but it's something like 5% or something. It's not that much. It's not as risky as everybody would think, at least so far, but it's a new thing. And so who knows? So no guarantees out there. I'm not guaranteeing anybody anything, but there's a site this guy writes. It's called Crowdscale, and he did analysis of this stuff recently of what the percentages were that be of failure and stuff. He's actually a very insightful guy. He writes good stuff, but it's a new thing, but it is going to be a big thing, and it's taking a while, but people have to get used to it. And people have to see, oh yeah, boy, that guy made 5 times, he made 10 times, he whatever. And I lost my money or I lost some or maybe, but most people don't lose money. I mean, at least so far. Most of the time it's like, yeah, okay, I made 30% on or it's still out there. I mean, a lot of them are just still out there. So who knows?
Well, I love it. You're innovating on the tech side. You're innovating on the crowdfunding side.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff. Charles, we only have a few minutes left. What are some brutal lessons you've learned
Wow.
along the way that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think it's like I would say, especially in software, that you have to be serious about product. It's got to be is you've got to have real engineers building real product that is robust, that stands up, that has all the bells and whistles. Because a lot of people think they have a product that don't have a product. They have a science experiment. And, it's a hard lesson because it works and all that. Well, it's not the same thing. It's not going to scale. It's not going to be, people don't want to do anything. And I'm one of them. I don't want it like I take my phone. Am I expecting to do from some freaking like, okay, I got to configure this thing. It's like, no, I want it to work. I want to put it on, and that's it. And it's the same thing you think about with NerdPack, right? You don't want to deal with it at all. So what do we have to do? We've got to get to a point where we have it in a microcontroller, which it'll work in, just a cheap little 10-cent microcontroller. And then somebody with a sensor puts it in the thing, puts it in their sensor. Somebody with a the satellite satellite, whatever it is, I don't know why I'm blanking on the name, but they have to put it in the thing so that when the end user buys it, it's already there. And they don't even know it's there. All they know is, geez, this is really fast. That's it. I mean, they don't even have to know our name, right? It's just that's the end game. The end game is always get rid of the friction and building the product, getting rid of any friction, making it. I mean, I don't want a UI. UIs are going to go away. UIs are going to be history because no one wants to do anything other than operate whatever it is. And so one of these days, a UI for configuration, yeah, but not a UI for actual users, right? And so at the end of the day, that's the hard lesson is to me is like you've got to make this so it's totally without any friction, nothing.
All right. So building great products and taking away the friction. What about lessons learned from capital raise perspective?
Yeah, well, I've got a lot of experience in that. Remember, I used to be a banker, right? So I did multi-billion-dollar deals and raised money for them and stuff. It comes down to this. It and yeah, there's a ton of differences between a retail investor and cynical pro, but at the same time, it always comes down to the same thing, which is do they trust you and believe you? And how quickly and how sincerely you can generate trust is so that they look at you and they say, yeah, I mean, you have to have a compelling thing, but you've got to believe in it. And if you don't believe in it, it's not going to work. And if you believe in it and you are come across as a trustworthy person, then you can you can do what you want. I mean, you can raise what you need, but of course, you have to back it up. You got to have real track record and people have to really believe, that what you're doing is real and everything. And we are. I mean, and I think I'd like to be able to say that I think I always have. I think it's critically important. There's nothing more important than your reputation, but it's also being able to establish rapport and make people feel like you're really, really seriously engaging and taking them seriously and respecting them and all that. I know it's an
Charles,
old
thank
saying.
you so much. Great advice. Congrats on the success you've had and with Atombeam Technologies. Thanks for the tidbits you shared around the tech, around capital structures, around being a crowdfunding expert. This has been fun. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you liked the show, go ahead and hit subscribe. If you didn't, well, tell your competitors about it. They could probably use the help. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters.
All
Till
right.
next time.
Thank you, Steve.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.